You arrive before the sun does. The air hasn't moved yet. It just sits there, cold, holding the last part of the night. The stone under your feet feels heavier than it should, like it remembers everything that's passed through here. Your steps echo once, then they don't. It's like the place absorbs the sound before it has a chance to travel. No one turns. No one even notices you're here. You walk through a corridor most people will never see. Not because it's hidden, because it doesn't matter to them. There's a door at the end, small, easy to miss if you didn't already know it was there. You unlock it without thinking. Your hands move before your mind catches up. You've done this too many times for it to feel like a choice. Inside, everything is already in place. Nothing is out of position. Nothing is waiting for you. You're not here to change anything. You're here to keep it from changing. You move quietly. Not because you're trying to be careful. Because this place expects silence. It's built into the way things happen here. You belong here, just not in a way anyone would ever acknowledge. No title, no recognition. But you're already part of it. Long before you understood what it even is. You wake up at the same time every day. Not because you set an alarm. Because your body doesn't need one anymore. You're always ahead of everything else. Before the system starts moving. Before it shows itself. Your work is simple, clear, predictable. There's no ambiguity in it. You know exactly what needs to be done. And exactly how to do it. You don't wait for instructions. You stop needing them a long time ago. You fix what's broken. You prepare what will be used. You reset everything back to where it's supposed to be. Nothing more, nothing less. There's a kind of comfort in that. No decisions that matter. No pressure beyond execution. You just move from one task to the next. And it works. The system runs because you make sure it does. That's enough. Or at least it feels like it should be. You see people pass through the spaces you prepare. They move differently, faster sometimes, slower other times. But never like you. They don't look at what you've done. They don't notice what was missing before you got there. They just move through it. Like it was always supposed to be that way. You're not part of their conversations. You're not part of their time. But without you, their time wouldn't exist the way it does. They don't see that. And you don't expect them to. So you keep going. You adjust things. You maintain them. You fade back into the background. It becomes automatic. Almost invisible. And then something starts to feel off. Not immediately. Just small things at first. There are people here who seem to do less than you. Or at least, that's how it looks. They don't arrive as early. They don't stay as long. They don't carry tools. They don't follow routines. They don't fix anything. And yet, when they move, things move with them. You notice it in details you can't ignore. Doors open differently for them. Conversations shift when they speak. People pause. Listen. Adjust. Nothing about them looks heavier. They're not working harder. They're not moving faster. But somehow, everything responds. You see it. You don't fully understand it yet. But you feel it. And once you notice it, you can't stop noticing it. Something doesn't line up. You're closer to the work than anyone. You're the first one in, the last one out. You touch everything before it happens. You see what breaks, what holds, what needs to be fixed before anyone else even realizes there's a problem. You're inside the process. Completely. And still, nothing moves because of you. Decisions don't start where you are. They don't pass through your hands. They just appear. Already shaped, already decided. By the time they reach you, they're finished. You never see where they begin. Only where they land. And the people making them, they're never where the work is. They're not fixing anything. They're not preparing anything.
They're not carrying any of the weight. But when they speak, everything adjusts. Immediately. You start to feel the gap. The distance between where things happen and where they're decided. And it's not small. The further someone is from the work, the more control they seem to have. The closer you are to the process, the less influence you carry. It doesn't feel logical, but it keeps showing up again and again. And then something shifts in how you see it. Access changes. You're not just working with your hands anymore. You start handling documents, schedules, internal instructions. You see names you didn't see before, timelines, priorities, movement. You're closer now. Closer than you've ever been. You see how things connect. How one decision leads to another. How everything fits into something bigger. But none of it belongs to you. You don't decide what it means. You don't choose what happens next. You pass it along. You organize it. You maintain its flow. But you don't touch its direction. And that's when it becomes clear. Seeing something doesn't mean you control it. Understanding something doesn't mean you can use it. And underneath everything, there's something else. Something you didn't notice before. A structure. Not written anywhere you can access. Not explained. But always there. It decides what moves, what stays still, what matters. Not the people, not the effort, not even the roles themselves. You don't see it directly, but everything follows it. Every action, every decision, every outcome. It doesn't need to be explained. It just works. And you're already inside it. You've been inside it the whole time. You just didn't know where to look. And without realizing it, you start moving differently. Not because you understand it, but because you're getting closer to where it flows through. You begin at the bottom, where everything is simple. Your role is defined, contained. You know your place. There's stability in that. Clarity. You don't have to think about anything beyond what's in front of you. There's no pressure to decide. No expectation beyond execution. And for a while, that feels like enough. But nothing changes because of you. The system runs. You keep it running. That's it. You maintain it. You don't shape it. And eventually, you see that. So you move. Not in a way anyone announces. Not with a clear step forward. Just closer. You leave the physical work behind. You move toward information. Now you're inside the offices. Behind doors you used to pass without noticing. You're not fixing things anymore. You're handling what moves before things happen. Documents, schedules, internal communication. You see how decisions form. Not fully, but enough to notice patterns. You read everything. You understand more than you did before. You can see what could be done differently. What could be improved. What could be changed. But you don't change it. You can't. You prepare it for someone else. You organize it. You make sure it flows without friction. But you don't touch its meaning. And that gap, it becomes sharper now. Because you can see it. You can see what matters. But you're not the one who decides. You're closer, but still outside. And that feeling, it stays with you. So you move again. This time toward people. Now you're not processing anything. You're guiding. You speak. And people listen. They come to you for direction, for answers, for clarity. You influence what they do, how they think, how they act. It feels different. It feels like power. And in a way it is, but not the kind you thought. Because nothing changes beyond them. The structure stays the same. The system doesn't shift. You operate inside it. You don't define it. You can guide individuals. You can't reshape the framework they exist in. And eventually, you see that too. So you move further. Now you oversee not just people, entire groups, multiple units. You assign roles. You evaluate outcomes. Your decisions start to scale. They affect more than one place, more than one person. And that feels like progression. Like you're finally moving into something real. But then you notice the limits. They're not obvious at first, but they're always there. You can act. As long as it aligns. As long as it fits. As long as it doesn't break what already exists. The structure above you doesn't move. No matter what you see. No matter what you think. And the more you understand, the more you realize how little of it is yours. So you move again. Further out. Wider scope. Now you're not just managing. You're coordinating. Aligning different parts, different regions, different systems. All moving under the same expectation. Consistency. You're trusted now. That part is real. But trust comes with something else. You don't act freely. You act correctly. And correctness is defined somewhere else, not by you. So again, you move closer to the center. Now you're not executing anything. You're not managing anything. You're present before things even exist. You sit where ideas begin to take shape. Not decisions. Something earlier than that. Direction. You don't decide outcomes. You influence what becomes possible. What gets considered. What gets formed. There are very few people here. And none of you act alone. Everything is interconnected. Carefully. Quietly. The most important shifts don't look like decisions. They look like inevitabilities. Like they were always going to happen. Long before anyone says them out loud. And here, something becomes impossible to ignore. The people who speak publicly are not the ones deciding. They're the ones delivering. The outcome was shaped before that moment. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. So you move one last time to the highest visible point. Everything leads to you. Every layer connects upward. Your voice carries further than anyone else's. You represent the entire structure. From the outside, it looks like control. But from here, it feels different. Heavier. More constrained. Every word is measured. Every action has weight. You don't move freely. You move within boundaries that already exist. You don't create the structure. You inherit it. You maintain it. And then you see it. There is something above even this. Not a person. Not a role. Not something you can point to. A system. It doesn't change when people do. It doesn't collapse when positions shift. It absorbs. It continues. Everyone below moves through it. No one stands outside it. Not even here. And once that becomes clear, everything else changes. The levels don't feel like progress anymore. They feel like distance. Distance from the surface. Closer and closer to something you never controlled. At some point, it stops feeling like a ladder. You don't think in terms of levels anymore. You start noticing repetition instead. The titles change. The responsibilities expand. The distance from the work increases. But underneath it all, nothing really shifts. The same structure holds. You gain reach, you gain access, you gain visibility. And at the same time, something else tightens. Not all at once. Slowly. Almost quietly. Your actions become narrower. Your choices become fewer. Your room to move shrinks. At first, it doesn't feel like that. It feels like expansion. More people rely on you, more decisions pass through you. It looks like control. But when you pay closer attention, you realize the decisions were never yours to begin with. They arrive already shaped, framed before you ever see them. You're not deciding freely. You're selecting between options that were already defined. And the higher you move, the more precise those boundaries become. Less tolerance for error, less space for interpretation. Less of you. You thought responsibility would give you more control. It doesn't. It just makes the limits harder to see. What feels like progress isn't freedom. It's substitution. You trade one form of restriction for another that looks more refined. You leave physical effort behind. You move into information, then into influence, then into alignment. Each step feels cleaner, more advanced, more important. But each step removes something until what's left is not freedom. It's precision. You begin to see it clearly now. Responsibility doesn't expand your power. It deepens your constraints. Visibility doesn't make you independent. It makes you accountable to things you don't control. Access doesn't make you sovereign. It places you closer to the structure that defines what's allowed. You're not moving out of the system. You're moving deeper into it. And the deeper you go, the less of you exists outside it. You're not climbing. You're being absorbed. You were told something simple. Work harder. That was the first rule. Do more than everyone else. Stay longer. Push further. And for a while, it works. You become reliable, consistent, indispensable in small ways. But then you notice something. The people doing the most are the easiest to replace. They're closest to the work, closest to execution, and the furthest from control. Their effort keeps everything running, but it doesn't move anything forward. It sustains the system. It doesn't shape it. So you shift your focus. Maybe it's not about effort. Maybe it's about climbing, moving up, taking on more responsibility, getting closer to decisions. And again, it works. At least on the surface. You move higher. You gain more authority, more visibility. But something changes. You start adjusting yourself. Your language, your timing, your reactions. You stop saying what you think. You start saying what fits. You don't act freely anymore. You act correctly. And correctness isn't something you define. Climbing didn't free you. It just made the constraints more subtle, more embedded. Then there's the last belief. Accumulate. Save. Build something that belongs to you. Something separate from the system. And you do. You collect resources. You create stability. You build something that feels like control. But it sits next to the structure. Not inside it. Personal. Contained. Disconnected. You can own more. Have more. Protect more. And still have no influence over what actually moves. Because ownership alone doesn't shift systems. Positioning does. And you were never positioned. You were participating. That's the difference. And once you see that, it's hard to go back. Because it becomes obvious. The problem was never effort. Not discipline, not consistency, not even time. The problem was the game itself. You optimized inside a structure you didn't understand. And it gave you exactly what it was built to give. Movement. Without control. At some point, things stop feeling complicated. Not because they become simple, but because you stop expecting them to work differently. You used to think the top was power, that if you could just get there, everything would open up. But the top is just a position. And positions exist inside something else. Something that doesn't depend on who holds them. The system doesn't reward effort. It doesn't track how hard you worked. It doesn't adjust because you tried more. It doesn't even reward titles. Titles describe where you are. They don't determine what you can change. What the system responds to is alignment. How closely you fit into it. How little resistance you create. And beneath that, something deeper. Positioning. Not where you stand publicly, but close to where decisions are shaped. Close to where outcomes are defined. That's where influence begins. Not at the top. Not at the surface. But at the points where the system forms itself. And once you see that, something shifts. Quietly. You stop chasing the next level because you understand what it actually costs. You stop measuring progress by movement because you see what movement trades away. And instead, you start looking at the structure itself. Not how to rise within it, but how it holds everything in place. That's the difference. If you begin to see it, you don't look at the world the same way anymore. Subscribe if you want to understand how systems actually operate, not how they appear.